Ready to elevate your credit understanding and score? With insider tips and a plan, you can take action to improving your score, which can save thousands in unnecessary finance charges. Let's tackle today's topic with your coach, Credit Christy.
Hey friends, it's Christy, your credit coach. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode. Today, let's answer the question, can collection agencies keep updating credit reports? And the short answer is yes. Heck yes, they can. The long answer, though, is probably more important for you to understand what they can change and update on your credit report and also what effects it has on your credit profile. So let's start with suggesting you have a dispute, that you want to dispute a collection that has come your way and you dispute it. If that credit bureau goes to that collection agency and they cannot prove that it's your information, they have to remove it completely. If there's inaccuracies, they have to correct it, and they have up to 30 days to make this happen. However, let's say you dispute it and it turns out that really is your account. It really is a collection because you stopped making payments on it and there's nothing to change, remove, delete, etc. That dispute will actually set a new date of last activity, DLA, on that collection. So if that collection is, say, 2 years old and hasn't been touched by the creditor for 2 years, you now have scraped open that wound that was healing and gave it a new date of last activity, which can have a very negative impact on your credit profile and your credit scores. So if you're going to dispute something just simply for the attempt at having them remove it, although you know it is your debt, it is your trade line, you did have it go to a collection account because of non-payment, whatever the case is, don't dispute it just for the purpose of disputing. And also, if that dispute language gets added to that trade line, if you wanted to apply for a mortgage loan down the road, you'll have to remove that dispute information, which now could impact the date of last activity again, which could further hurt your credit score. So let's answer, can a collection agency keep updating information on your credit report? Again, that short answer is yes, but let's break it down. The collection agency can continue to update the collection account until that 7-year reporting time of the original debt has expired. So if a collection agency gets assigned your old credit card debt and it becomes a new collection on January 1st, 2024, then it won't drop off until essentially January 1st of 2031. And in the meantime, if anything changes on, say, your balance, they could update that on the status, anything like that. So let's talk about why a collection agency or a creditor would update the accounts on your credit report. We've already tackled the disputing a collection account opens up that date of last activity. But what if the balance increased because they added more fees? Or what if you started making payments to that collection and that balance has decreased? Any activity, that collection agency can and should go in and update that information. And every time they do, that changes the date of last activity. Now, collection agencies can also report the open date for their collection account as the date that they received collection authority. And how do they receive collection authority? Either by assignment from the original creditor, or if they purchased the debt from another collection agency that isn't collecting from you anymore. They weren't able to collect that debt, so they sold it off to a secondary collection agency, and that's the open date. That open date has nothing to do with the original creditor because it's a new listing of a trade line. So you might be thinking that that original date for that original credit card, you opened it up in 2020. Well, if it became a collection in 2023, that collection can remain on your credit report until 2030 for 7 years, not from the original open date of that original credit card. And I think that's where a lot of people get tripped up thinking it's going to fall off or drop off after 7 years. But it's after 7 years of the open date as a new collection. Collection agencies will sometimes update your collection account as a strategy to get payment or to encourage you to settle the debt. So think about this. If they went in monthly or quarterly and said, hey, we're adding these fees because it's late and we have these other, transaction fees, and we increase that balance, it also updates that date of last activity. Again, like scratching a wound. When you reopen that gross little wound, it starts to bleed again. So the collection agencies might use that as a strategy to get you to pay or to settle the debt. Now, as time progresses, the negative impact of those collection accounts on your credit score, it diminishes. But by updating the collection account this way, by changing that balance, it causes the account to look more recent, thus hurting your credit score. So the only way to stop collection agencies from updating these balances is to pay it off entirely. Now, if you were to pay it off, whether you settle the debt or you pay it off in full, it's no longer open with an outstanding balance. It is now closed with a zero balance. And that closed and zero balance oftentimes will have a pretty decent impact on your credit report and on your overall credit score. So let me give you a quick example of somebody that we've just helped improve their credit so they can get qualified for down payment assistance on a mortgage so they can purchase their first home. This lady came to us a couple of months ago and she had several credit cards that were maxed out and she had a lot of collection accounts. So we started off with paying down the balances on her open and active credit cards. We got those below 30% and that got her 574 credit score up to about 620. But we have to get her above 640 in order to qualify for this down payment assistance program. So there were no other credit card balances to pay down. She did a great job eliminating them to nearly zero. I think most of them had like $10 to $20 balance. So there were a couple of newer collection accounts. And when I say newer, they were less than 6 months new. And they were small enough balances that she could afford to make those go away. So there were a couple little store credit cards that had somewhere between a $400 balance up to about a $900 balance on 3 of them. And she paid them, made it go away. Although that collection account is still reporting because they have a responsibility to continue to report it until it drops off after 7 years of when it had opened as a collection. Instead of it showing as an open with a balance, it's showing as closed and a zero balance. And this was enough to get her score up to a 651. And here's the great news. She's buying a home, her first home, and she's the first person in her known family tree to buy a home. So was it worth it? Absolutely. Now she's getting over $10,000 towards her down payment and closing costs to purchase her home. Okay, so what you should know about the date of delinquency. The date of delinquency refers to the date reported by the original creditor when you first became late or delinquent and no other payments were made. Now, this is very different from the date of last activity. The date of delinquency is also referred to as the date of first delinquency. So there's 2 really important things to know about this delinquency debt. First, the collection agency regularly updating your credit report has no impact on when the account is due to be excluded from your credit report. It's only and solely based on the date of delinquency. So if you do have a collection creditor that continues to update monthly or quarterly and making changes to that account, it will not change that date of first delinquency. Secondly, a collection agency has no legal authority to change that date of first delinquency. It is set in stone. So if somebody has changed that, it would be re-aging an account, and that's actually a violation of federal law. So again, that date of delinquency is referred to as that first date that collection had become a collection. So let me give you an example. A credit card that no longer received payment and got turned over to a collection agency. It went delinquent in June of 2017. The account would be removed from the credit reports on or about June of 2024. Now, you may have heard something that's called pay to delete. Not all creditors or collection companies can or will allow you to pay for delete, but let's just describe what that is. Sometimes you can negotiate an agreement called a pay for delete, and that is where if you make a payment to an agreed upon amount, that collection agency will delete it off of your credit report. The only time that's truly legal is if it's a secondary collection creditor. So in other words, collection company A started off with a collection for your credit card or auto loan or whatever it is, and they couldn't get you to pay them. So they sell that collection to collection company B. Collection company B can delete it because they are a secondary collection company, and then that removes that collection account completely from their listing on your credit report. It doesn't necessarily get rid of that first collection account, but that one should be aged older and have less of an impact on your overall credit profile and credit score. Now, most mortgage lenders are still using the scoring model that's called FICO 8. And if they do, the impact on having a paid off collection is less impactful than the FICO model 9. So on the FICO 9 scoring model, when that collection is marked as paid in full, basically that collection is disregarded as far as your credit score calculations and algorithm. But on the FICO 8, which is what the majority of lenders are still using, it doesn't have that much of an impact, although it still has a good impact because like my previous example here, we were able to get her up over 30 points by paying off 3 small collections. So all 3 of them are now reported with a 0 balance and closed. The question then might remain in your mind is, should you pay off a collection account even if it's not deleted? And the answer is, it depends. If it's an older collection, sometimes you don't want to wake that beast. That date of last activity has now been reinvigorated, and sometimes that improvement of having a 0 balance and a closed credit and a closed collection account could be negatively impacted by the new date of last activity. But if you see that that collection agency is constantly making updates on that account, maybe changing the balance and those kinds of things, well, the date of last activity has been stirred up and freshened up anyway, so paying it off could help you. Sometimes having a collection account greater than $2,000 for a non-medical collection could potentially stand in your way of getting approved for a mortgage loan, not necessarily because of your credit scores, but because that collection account is greater than $2,000. So if that's your case, have a conversation with your mortgage lender to see if it's going to negatively impact your approval possibility for a mortgage loan. And overall, having a collection paid off and closed, it could look like good behavior to the underwriter who's the decision maker on that mortgage loan, who's looking at your overall profile and making decisions about your attitude and your habits towards money. So will collections keep you from getting approved on a mortgage? Not necessarily, but it could make that approval process a little more challenging. I hope that this helps answer some questions you may have had about date of last activity or collections as they appear on your credit report. If you have questions, reach out to me at questions@creditchristie.com. And until next time, my friends, stay well.